Really feel very grateful about that. And we also have a few new people, so welcome to you. And we meet here every Tuesday and have for 20 years. So the link, so you know, everybody knows this. Sometimes I forget to put the link in the email, but the link is the same every week. So you, if I forget to put it in there, you just have to click on last week's link and you'll be here. So from this state of great joy and anticipation, this sense of being in the right place at the right time and being here for the benefit of everybody, let's take refuge. Andrew, forgive us, we have a little bit of a process here, but it just takes a couple minutes. When we take refuge outwardly in the Buddha and what he accomplished, but also inwardly in our own Buddha nature, since that is what was actualized by the Buddha and is what we are attempting to actualize. So thinking with your mind kind of like this, outward and inward, think I take refuge, and then just let go. We don't just take refuge in the Buddha, we also take refuge in the Dharma, all the techniques, the teachings, the complete collection of understanding that we can use to traverse the path. This is called the Dharma. So thinking like that, think I take refuge in the Dharma. A third refuge is the Sangha. That's not just our little community, and it's not even all the, say, Buddhists, and it's not even all the spiritual people. It's in fact all beings, because all beings are on the same side of the table, so to speak. We're all attempting to become free, attempting to find a place of peace. So when we know that, then we suddenly have so many friends on the path. It's not just a few people that we know who are also meditating. It's everybody, and in fact, all beings throughout space and time. So thinking like that, think I take refuge in the Sangha. These are the traditional refuges, but because we practice of Vajrayana, we also take refuge in the Guru. So whoever you see as your Guru, imagine that wherever they are, when you call to them, they immediately turn toward you. So you say, Lama Kyeno, Lama Kyeno, Lama Kyeno. That causes the Lama to turn toward you and come from wherever they are. They feel so happy. And the Guru arrives above your head. You think, Lama Kyeno, Lama Kyeno, Lama Kyeno. This causes the top of your head to open like the iris of an eye. The Lama sinks down and shrinks down and arrives on a very beautiful and special lotus-shaped couch in the center of your heart. That feels good. Rest in that for a second. And the Lama grows, Lama Kyeno, and you and the Lama become one. And just rest with your mind and the Lama's mind mingled.
For me.
Those are the refuges. But why are we taking refuge? Why are we meditating? Why are we practicing? Why are we here to hear Andrew? It's because it is intolerable that sentient beings are suffering. So turn your mind toward all the beings in the world, all the beings you care about and all the beings you don't care about, all the beings that you know and all the beings you don't know, and recognize that we're all the same. We all want happiness and we want to avoid suffering. We want to get what we want and avoid those things that make us suffer. We're all on the same page. So when we meditate and when we listen to Andrew tonight, we do so to benefit everybody, nobody excluded. The vast mind of the Mahayana. Extend your mind like that and embrace all beings, even those beings you don't like. And then think, I'm going to practice tonight, and every day until I attain enlightenment, not just for myself, not even just for those who I care for, but for all beings. And let be. Very good. That feels very good, doesn't it? It feels like your heart is very big, embraces everyone, and we're here for the benefit of everybody. So let's say the refuge in bodhicitta. Put your hands like this. Ricky, if you want to post that, you can. For those of you who don't know it. And if you don't know it, just think, I'm going to practice for the benefit of everybody. That's all you got to think. Ready? In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, I will attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. Just let be in that for a second. Abandoning thoughts about the past, thoughts about the future. Come to this very instant and make up your mind, like Tulku Urgyen always tells us, that we are going to gain something tonight. We're going to make progress during this very session. What other session do we have? And we have a special guest, which is really nice. And he's going to bring his own wisdom from various traditions, and that is very wonderful. So that is, here we are. Now we've entered into the mandala. So Andrew Holecek is here with us tonight from here in Colorado. As I said, he's taking time out of his extraordinarily busy schedule to spend an hour and a half with us. And I myself am very grateful. We're all very grateful. Thank you so much for making time. And we didn't schedule anything, so we're giving him complete free rein. But if you have any questions that come up during his presentation, or you have other questions from his books or anything you might have read, then jot them down or put them, make a mental note, because we will have time for questions and answers at the end. So with that, with no further ado, I am going to turn it over to Andrew. Andrew, thanks for being here. Really grateful.
Thanks, Joseph. I appreciate it. Thanks to Rick and everybody else for joining us. I know I'm not the only one that's busy, so it's really a delight to talk about what's really meaningful, right? Like what really matters. And so really, I do encourage Q&A and discussion. And so I will allow plenty of time for that. That's actually my favorite part, because the universe is participatory, right? If we don't enact this reality, nothing actually comes forth. And so please feel free, maybe give me a chance to run with a few riffs for a bit, but questions in the chat column, or obviously best, you know how to do it, raise the reaction, do the reaction thing, raise your hand, and we can engage in some conversation. I do want to say just one very kind of brief preliminary thing about what I'm going to start with, is the engagement of a really wonderful Indic pedagogical approach. You'll find it in non-dual Shaiva Tantra, Advaita Vedanta. You'll find it in the Tibetan tradition, of course. And my languaging, Gnostic pedagogy, which is fundamentally the three wisdom tools, the three prajnas, basically fundamentally ways to quite literally incorporate the Dharma. So you know these: hearing, contemplating, meditating, listen, contemplate, meditate, or in my languaging, ingest, digest, metabolize, so that the teachings just don't stay up here. Because if they do, they're just choked off, and it's philosophy in the pejorative sense. And so I think what makes what we're doing here different from any kind of university course or whatnot is, in fact, this kind of embodied gnosis, this knowing. And if we get a chance, if you want to talk a little bit about Bardo principles and what to do around death and dying, one of the best things you can do is simply just be at the side of someone who is dying. And the type of practices that we do installs really in the subtle body, and then really in the subtle innermost body, these teachings are being installed at that fundamental level. And so I'm going to start with the metabolism phase, ingest, digest, metabolism. We're going to start with just a very brief meditation And I will then pepper a couple of meditations throughout my presentation to you, kind of like a little opportunity to take a sip of space. Because one of the things that characterizes Tantra Vajrayana and then Dzogchen Sahajayana, right? The fourth vehicle, Sahajayana, the vehicle of self-liberation, is short sessions repeated often. And I'm a massive fan of long practices. I've done 3 retreat. I spent years in retreat. But I find, especially within the context of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, short sessions repeated often, just as important, or in terms of mixing meditation with post-meditation or life, really almost more important. So I'm going to share with you a practice. I start every single morning with this practice, and I'm going to guide us through it. It couldn't be easier. And then I'm going to do a little commentary on how this relates to Dzogchen principles altogether. So go ahead and close your eyes. Put your hand over your heart if it feels right for you. Go ahead and close your eyes. I do this every single morning. And take a second just to check in. What's the weather like today? What am I feeling? Transformation really only takes place at the level of feeling. Swami Kripalu once said, right? The highest form of spiritual practice is self-observation without judgment. So whatever you're feeling, feel it 100%. Even if you're feeling like total crap, feel that 100%. That does not create karma. It may be the result of karma, but feeling it does not create karma. Reactivity and appropriate relationship to that feeling, that's what creates the karma. Putting your hand over your heart, it's actually a form of metta, maitri. I'm okay. I'm okay just the way I am. I may be really hurting today. I may be in a heap of pain. But fundamentally, I'm okay. In fact, I'm not just okay, I'm basically good. I'm actually divine. And that means that ensconced within what would normally be the profanity of some difficult experience is the divinity. I just need to recognize it. This is actually an intimation, as I'll talk about in a few minutes, of a somatic, visceral, affective, great completion. Feel whatever you're feeling completely. Trungpa Rinpoche once famously said, by the way, today is his parinirvana. There's no such thing as an underdeveloped moment. And while you're doing this, if you're familiar with this recitation, this is the next thing I do every morning before I launch into my longer sadhanas and pujas and whatnot. The 4 immeasurables, the 4 divine abodes, the Brahma Viharas, right? All sentient beings enjoy happiness and the roots of happiness. That includes me. May they be free from suffering and the roots of suffering. May they not be separated from the great happiness devoid of suffering. May they dwell in the great equanimity free from passion, aggression, and prejudice. And then for just a minute, and you'll see why, hang with me for a bit. Just a minute of Tonglen. Practice of sending and taking. What we're trying to cultivate with these practices, metta, maitri, 4 immeasurables, Tonglen, is we're actually cultivating, we're nurturing the lightest possible mind, bodhicitta. I'll say more about that in just a second. But for just a minute, you know how to do this, right? Flash, absolute bodhicitta, open, so that when you do the remaining 3 stages of Tonglen, you're not doing this, the universe is. You are acting as a representative of reality, and so you're breathing in on behalf of the universe all the darkness, all the pain, all the suffering. And there's, oh boy, there's a heap of hurt these days, right? Do not lose touch with that. Metta puts you in touch with yourself. Highest levels then with Tonglen puts you in touch with others. And as Joseph said, always remember the essence of spiritual practice is remembrance. We're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for this world that so desperately needs our help. So through every pore of your body, in the medium of the breath, it's not just your inhalation and exhalation, respiration, it's every pore of your body that's breathing in all the darkness, all the pain, all the suffering. And again, you're not doing it. The universe is doing it. And then with every out-breath, beaming it to the limits of the cosmos, right? The cosmic air conditioning system. My teacher, Khenpo Tsultrim Gamsa Rinpoche, once said, it's really, really, really difficult to accelerate psychospiritual evolution. Karma has to work its way out. But then he said, however, there is one thing that can accelerate your psychospiritual development, and that, of course, is walking the path for the benefit of others. So this is why without the bodhisattva idea, without bodhicitta, without developing this lightest possible mind, the upayas, the spiritual technology of the Tantra, doesn't work. In the schema of the 4 yana system, Hinayana, or the Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, and then Sahajayana, follows the Hegelian narrative of transcend but include. So Mahayana transcends but includes the principles of Hinayana. Vajrayana transcends but includes the principles of both. Sahajayana is the same. And so the Vajradhara Trungpa Rinpoche once famously said, practicing the Tantra without bodhicitta, which then means also without the precepts of the Theravada Hinayana, is like having the most elaborate, majestic, ultra-modern house with every conceivable gadget, but no hookup. So nothing works. The Tantra is the upaya, the technology doesn't work. And so people in the impatient West, I've been rolling in this world for a long time, teaching, presenting as a meditation instructor. And so many people in the West are impatient, right? You know, somehow thinking they're a little bit entitled, elitist. They can just transcend, hopscotch over my dear friend Pema Chodron. This is, I mean, she's made her career out of resubstantiating the centrality of the Mahayana fundamentally. And so people hopscotch over into the Tantras. At best, it doesn't work. At worst, it fries them. This is rocket fuel. I mean, Tantra is prescription strength medicine. You're working with the most powerful thermonuclear practices ever devised by the human spirit. And so if they're not held within the proper mandala, essence container, practices that will light you up, burn you up. I've seen this in my 3-year retreat. People go in, they do these tsalung practices, they get the soklung, the wind disorders, really, really bad stuff. Or they go into dark retreat. I've been doing a lot of dark retreat the last decade. People go in there for 49 days. I mean, why not? Aaron Rodgers just did it, right? right? They go in there. There's a reason these practices are prescription strength. They go in there, they do these practices, and instead of attaining enlightenment, they attain intimations of insanity. You know all this, but it's important. If you really want to do the Tantra, I just published an article. Maybe I can send it to Joseph or Rick, and I'll send it out to you guys for Tucker Magazine called "Is the West Ready for Tantra?" They have this. It's a cool magazine. I like them. And they asked me to write a little piece. Actually, they asked me to review the issue, and then I said, "Hey, you're missing a really central piece here with all these scholars from all these different Hindu, Buddhist, and other tantric traditions." I said, is the West ready for Tantra? So maybe I can send it out to you, and then you can ping it to the group. Maybe. So the idea here is, in order to have these spiritual technologies work, the central maxim in the Tantric tradition, the preliminaries are more important than the main practice. Let me say that again. The preliminaries are more important than the main practice. So if you really want these practices to work, non-negotiable, the infrastructure has to be there. And that's why if you're doing these things and it's not working, it's not the problem of the practice. It's lack of preparation. And I'm speaking from direct personal experience, decades on this path, especially in the impatient West, right? And people, especially, I see this in long retreat, especially when you're doing like the Naruchidra, the 6 yogas, which are all about, they're advanced practices, a little bit dangerous because there are signs associated with every one of these practices. If you don't have the heat, that's a sign you're not succeeding in Tumo. If you're not having lucidity, you're not succeeding in dream yoga. If you're not waking up in deep dreamless sleep, you're not doing Ursa, luminosity yoga. If you're not having signs at the top of your head, you're not succeeding, you're not having the signs of Poa. And so then people get into retreat and they push, right? They push. And that's where the problems start. So as I mentioned earlier, we want to develop this lightest possible mind, double entendre intended. Lightest as in the most free, most unencumbered, and also lightest as in enlightenment, as in luminosity. And so this actually acts as a type of Poa. Joseph talked a little bit about how you guys were doing some Poa stuff. Let me just say a couple words about Poa. There's many different types. Let me say a little bit here. 5 types of Tantric Poa. What we're working with here, when you're working with Dzogchen Mahamudra, you're working with the highest form of Poa, which is Dharmakaya Poa, Rigpa Poa. And that Poa takes place, you don't have to affect this. This Poa takes place naturally through the study of the formless practices, because you're actually cultivating the lightest mind. And so if you do these practices, Poa, what does it literally mean? It means movement, transference. Well, there's forceful methods of transference. That's Nirmanakaya Poa. That's the hiccup Poa. That's using Tsalung practices. But in a certain way, you have to be careful when you say it's the highest, quote unquote. Dharmakaya Poa is what we're doing with Mahamudra and Dzogchen. This is a Poa that does not need to be affected. There's nothing to do. Non-distracted, non-meditation, Buddhahood without practice. But what are you doing in order to do that? You're lightening your load, What did, this is great. What did George Strait saying, right? I've never seen a hearse with a luggage rack, right? Never seen a hearse with a luggage rack. So every people, Gandhi allegedly, this is great. My mind thinks I kind of go off a flowchart, kind of serendipitous flowing here, but Gandhi allegedly died. All his possessions could be fit into a shoebox. That's pretty light mind. I mean, look at this shit behind me, man. I couldn't move without 2 massive van lines, right? Right. So this is why these are my attachments. This shit right here. I'm very aware of this, right? Like Marpa, when he went across the river and the jealous scholar threw all his books overboard. I read that and I start shaking. It's like, God, forbid that ever happens to me. This is what I'm totally attached to. But the idea here is with these practices, Metta, Maitri, Bodhicitta, Tonglen, dropping the load. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Dalai Lama says, Bodhicitta lays a red carpet for you in the bardus, right? Doing these practices, everything for the benefit of others. This is the highest form of Poa. Second, then, of course, Sambhogakaya Poa, right? This includes deity yoga. This includes actually Pure Land teachings. The teachings on Dewa Chan and all the other Pure Lands. That's Sambhogakaya Poa. Nirmanakaya Poa, that's, I suspect, Joseph, correct me, is probably what you were working with. Incredibly effective, forceful method of liberation. Basically working through the central channel, roto-rooting, flossing your central channel so that the bindu can then be sent out the top of your head. That's pretty cool. The other type that I work with a lot is Dream Yoga Poa, creating what's called a special dream body. That's stage 7 Dream Yoga. We can talk about that in the Q&A if you want. Very, very effective way. Dream Yoga came about principally as a way to prepare for death. The Dream Yoga Poa is a very powerful way to prepare. And then the last of the tantric poas is Guru Yoga Poa, using devotion, bhakti. And then parenthetically, don't forget the sutra levels of Poa, especially what's called the power of the white seed, which is basically fundamentally in contemporaneous language, that's what's doing your advanced directives are Poa of the white seed. So if you haven't done your advanced directives yet, right, do them. It's bodhisattva activity. It's not for yourself. You're doing your advanced directives for others. You're letting go of your stuff even on paper. That's lightening your load so the mind transfers, right? So these are just a really, really brief riff on the types of Poa and how it's connected to Mahamudra and Dzogchen. You're doing Dharmakaya Poa. It's kind of stealth help. There's more going on with these really advanced practices than may meet the eye, right? So you're actually preparing very, very directly for the end of death. I mean, have you noticed this, right? If you've been practicing spiritual path and death, meditation in particular, it's just death in slow motion. It's all really archetypally, fundamentally a way to prepare for the end of life. So I want to talk to you just a little bit. I want to share a story with you. Tuku Ujin Rinpoche, that name was mentioned. I mean, what are the great Dzogchen masters, right? Well, as you know, he has 4 amazing sons. I know, well, 3 of them, the 4th one died. I know them all pretty well. And Mingyur Rinpoche is, I mean, this guy's a rock star, right? So I want to share a story from my 3-year retreat. This was really eye-opening, humbling experience for me. So we were in our last year of 3-year retreat. And it was always such a rare, magnificent event when a High Lama Rinpoche would come in. Because you can imagine, I mean, you know, you're working, practicing pretty much 24/7. And so you're so open, you're so ripe. And we had word that Mingyur Rinpoche, he was just a little kid at this point. I mean, I wasn't a kid, he was probably 19, 20. Could barely speak English. So he came in, excuse me, we heard he was coming in, and oh, Meg, we got so excited. And I can't speak for my other retreatants, but I can only tell you from my end, like we're halfway through 3rd year, yeah, like, you know, I'm about to get my postdoc, right? This is postdoc spirituality. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, and he's going to talk to us about dark retreat, Togal, Tekshu, Mahamudra, I mean, like the most super esoteric thing, you know? Guess what he did? He came in and for 2.5 hours, he talked about merit. And I said, are you effing kidding me? Here I am, I'm about to get my 2nd PhD in meditation. And here he is throwing me back into kindergarten, which is where I really needed to be. I thought I knew all about merit. I didn't know shit about merit. It was brilliant. So for 2.5 hours, he talks about the unbelievable power of merit. And I'm telling you, it was a game changer for me. It's completely altered my relationship to this kind of cosmic currency. And so basically, whether we know it or not, brief reminder, essence of spiritual practice is remembrance. Let me say that again so you don't forget. Essence of spiritual practice is remembrance, whether it's remembering to come back to the present moment, drempa, mindfulness in Tibetan, to recollect, to remember. Whether it's remembering that you're a deity yoga, yidam practices. Remembering that you're a Buddha, right? Formless nature, Mahamudra practices. Basically, the issue is one of forgetfulness. Distraction is the moment-to-moment iteration of forgetfulness. We all suffer from a type of really interesting kind of Bardo PTSD. I can riff on that in the Q&A if you want. And one of the kind of manifestations of PTSD is amnesia. Forgetfulness. We forget that we are the Buddha. We suffer from this primordial kind of amnesia. So the practice of the path is remembering, recollecting, reconstituting. And so all these teachings are fundamentally, they're jogging your memory. You already know this crap, man. Right? 4 types of guru. We talked a little bit about the relationship of Dharma, Guru, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Guru, Yidam, Dakini. 4 types of guru, never forget. First type of guru, physical teacher, indispensable. Really, second type of guru, really is Dharma, the text. The latter two are the most interesting for me. Third type is symbolic guru. Your world becomes your teacher. Like Milarepa said, phenomena are all the books one needs. When you become open and available, you don't need any of this crap back here. The world becomes your teacher. Have you noticed this? Through auspicious coincidence and tendril. You notice the world is magically always communicating if you're participating again. But all three of these are still provisional. The ultimate guru is the guru within, the Buddha within you. We just forget. We forget. So everything here, and that's why when you click into this stuff, have you noticed there's this kind of really elegant, beautiful, almost like nostalgia. Remember, it's like, I know this stuff. I've been here before. We just forgot. We just forgot. The essence of spiritual practice is remembrance. And so again, remind yourself, merit, okay? Whether you know it or not, you're on, you, all of us, we're principally on the first of the 5 paths. These are 5, it's not 5 separate paths, 5 stages on one path. Principally, what we're mostly doing right now is we're on the path of accumulation, whether we know it or not. If we don't know it, we're accumulating, but we're accumulating demerits. We're accumulating mindlessness. We're accumulating selflessness, ignorance. We're really good at that shit, man. I'm a virtuoso in the art of mindlessness because I practice it all the time. This is the other super important thing. You are always meditating. The Tibetan word for meditation, you know this, G-O-M, to become familiar with. You're always meditating, whether you know it or not. And the reason we're so good at samsara is because we practice it all the time. I use this a lot in my lucid dreaming stuff. The reason you have so many lucid dreams, non-lucid dreams at night, is because you're unwittingly practicing non-lucidity. Lucidity is a code word for awareness. You're unwittingly practicing non-lucidity all the time. Every single time you get caught up in distraction, every time you get sucked up, capitulate to discursive thinking, that's a moment of non-lucidity. And so like Kabir, right, instead of death applies to dream. What is found now is found then. Same in the Bardos, which is dream at the end of time. What is not found there is not found then. What is not found, I should say, what is not found now is not found then. So remember, you're always meditating. That's why I'll just speak for myself. Number 1, confused sentient being in this group, me. I've mastered the art of samsara. I wrote this piece about 20 years ago called The Sadhana of Samsara. This is also the genius of the Tantra. You guys work with sadhana practice. If you really dissect a sadhana very closely, it's absolutely genius what these masters have done. They take basically fundamentally what we're doing now in completely unconscious ways. 95% of what we do, and the neuroscientists will tell you this, is dictated by unconscious processes, at least. And so basically, whether we know it or not, slight sidebar, not only are we always meditating on selfishness, mindlessness, distraction, we're also basically always doing sadhana practice, whether we know or not. We're practicing the sadhana of samsara. And you can dissect every single thing you do in the structure of a sadhana practice and realize, oh my gosh, I'm practicing sadhana of samsara all the time. I'm the center of this mandala. My mantra is me, 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 or mine, 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 or I, or some version of that, right? Everything circumambulates this big think hole, this suck hole, this black hole called me. I'm the center of this shithole mandala. Is that okay? Can I use 4-letter words here? Sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody. But this is Tantra, man. I mean, Tantra is where you take the gloves off, you get real. So anyway, whether you know it or not, you're always practicing. And we forget that we're on the path of accumulation. Accumulating what? Merit, wisdom. Second path, concordant path, leading to the third path, which is the path of junction, the path of union. Concordant understanding, intimations of the realization of emptiness. Third path, this is where you want to get in this life. You want to get here before you die. The third path, the path of seeing. Basically synonymous with the first bhumi, because this is non-retrogressive. You attain the third path, even if it's just a glimpse. That's the child luminosity, by the way. That glimpse transforms into a gaze in the bardo. That's the mother and child reunion. You want to get to the third path in your life. How do you get there? Merit. Let me say that again. How do you get to the third path, non-retrogressive? You'll never fall back. Merit. This is great. I love this shit. It's like, this is great. In Buddhism, you can't put the fear of God into you, right? Because there's no creator principle. Occam's razor. You don't need a God. You can explain reality without a creator principle. But what you can do is you can put the fear of karma, right? This is great. This is like fire and brimstone, right? Put the fear of karma into you, right? Karma is deeply connected to merit. So you want to know, okay, so you get a pointing out transmission. This is important for tantrikas, sadhakas. You get a pointing out transmission, right? Right? I'm sure most people here have had this incredible experience or some Shaktipat or some other beautiful, beautiful thing, right? Have you noticed? I've been so fortunate to have dozens of these, I don't know, hundreds over someone. I've lived in Nepal for a long time. Have you noticed you walk out of these big empowerments, transmission things, and people whisper to each other, did you get it? Did you get it? Right? I'm not sure. I think I got it. I don't know. Did you get it? I don't know. I'm not sure I got it. Well, we can talk about some of the signs, like whether you know you got it or not. We can talk about that. But unless you're like King Indrabhuti, who gets, or like, I don't think he got slapped on the sandal, but some kind of a moment, powerful pointing out transmission, pointing in transmission. He gets it. He goes from the first bhumi to the 10th bhumi, from the path of accumulation all the way to the path of no more learning. That's the 5th path. Very rare. And it's because what he practiced in the previous life. But the reason we don't get it, there's not enough merit. If you don't have enough merit, it's like throwing seeds on concrete. It's not going to work. You could live next to Tulku Ujin. You could be a consort to a Mahasiddha, and you're not going to transmit because the container isn't prepared. So this is super important. So when Mingyur Rinpoche came in and gave this 2.5-hour incredible, humbling riff on merit, I tell you, it completely transformed my relationship to the path of accumulation. And it slapped me from my postdoc all the way back to kindergarten, which is really where I needed to be. Like, wait a second, I need some serious remedial work here. So this is all about, in my opinion, about why it's so important. The preliminaries are more important than the main practice. Tantrika sadhakas do these thermonuclear powered practices. And I've been around. Nothing's changing because the infrastructure isn't there. So I mentioned the three, I mentioned 4 of the 5 paths: path of accumulation, path of union, juncture, path of saying. That's where you want to get in this life. That's when reality is pointed out, or I like the word pointed in. Flash takes place. It's a glimpse. Glimpse. And then 4th path is the path of familiarity, literally the path of meditation, of to become familiar with, now with the awakened state. What was pointed out, literally Tamalgi Shepa, the first mind, the ordinary mind. Houston Smith put it beautifully. Process of the path at that level, once you get that, is transforming flashes of illumination into abiding light. Isn't that beautiful? That's the process of the path, to transform flashes of illumination into abiding light. So that's the path of meditation, the path of familiarity. That's basically traveling the bhumis 1 through 10, right? Because the 3rd path of seeing, is a glimpse of the first bhumi. And then the 4th path is stabilizing that until you reach the path of no more learning, Buddhahood. So the great gift of the Tantra, the great gift especially of Sahajayana, the vehicle of self-liberation, and this is what I want to emphasize, is the gift of immediacy. This cannot be overstated. What we're looking for is hiding in plain sight. That's why we don't see it. In the Mahamudra tradition, you probably heard this. What we're looking for, it's so obvious, you don't see it. It's so simple, you don't believe it. It's so easy, you don't trust it. And so the great gift of these most advanced teachings is showing you that what you're looking for is right here, right now, always already 100% present, even if you're feeling like total shit. Okay, so let's do this again. Now we're going to come back to this practice with a little bit more, maybe, doctrinal oomph. Put your hand over your heart, close your eyes. And experience whatever you're feeling. It doesn't matter what it is. Let me say that again. It doesn't matter. Whatever you're feeling right now, feel it 100% great completion. You do not have to have any special experience to be free. You do not have to have any special experience to be free. Experience fully, feel fully whatever is in front of you, within you, right now, 100% without approximation. That's it. This has been so powerful to me when my heart is broken, when I'm in a heap of hurt, when I'm experiencing things that are basically the antithesis of what I previously deemed to be spiritual. I can now find the spirit in that, the perfection in that, the divinity in that. That's the gift of Dzogchen Mahamudra. And one reason it's considered so advanced is because it's so simple. When I say this playfully, when I teach on this stuff playfully, someone will say something like the following: well, yeah, I guess. And then they go, but. I call it the big but. And if they say but, then I say, okay, then we have this thing called the path. Path to where? I'm going to read in honor of Trungpa Rinpoche, this radical Mahasiddha. This is his Parinirvana Day. I'm going to read, I think, one of the most seminal teachings from his introduction to the Tibetan Book of the Dead that I think is extraordinary. We could say that the real world is that in which we experience pleasure and pain, good and bad. But if we are completely in touch with these dualistic feelings, that absolute experience of duality is itself the experience of non-duality. Let me say that again. If we are completely in touch, that's the great completion. If we are completely in touch with these dualistic feelings, no matter how crappy you append it to be, that absolute experience of duality is the experience of non-duality. That's the immediacy. Then there is no problem at all. Back to him. Then there is no problem at all, because duality is seen from a perfectly open, clear, non-referential point of view in which there's no conflict. There's a tremendous encompassing vision of oneness. Excuse me. Conflict arises because duality is not seen as it is at all. It is only seen in a biased way, a very clumsy way. In fact, we do not perceive anything properly. And we begin to wonder whether such things as myself and my projections really exist. So when we talk about the dualistic world as confusion, that confusion is not the complete dualistic world, but only half-hearted. I mean, the implications here are astounding. It's right in front of you, whatever you want to call it, the clear light mind, nirvana. I mean, the dharmata, dharmadhatu, tathagata garbage, tathagata garba, basic goodness, 50 names for that which cannot be named. That's what we're looking for. There's nothing under any circumstance that is not it. It is always already 100% present. That's the teaching of Dzogchen Mahamudra. It's hiding in plain sight. So what I'm going to do now, playfully, I'm actually writing an article for Tricycle magazine. So I'm going to give you my little summary on this article I'm writing, okay? The two biggest problems with the spiritual path. If we had more time, I'd say, what do you think the two biggest problems are? I'm going to tell you what I think they are. Totally connected to my little Nundro preparation talk prep statement here. The two biggest problems with the spiritual path. Number one, use of the word spiritual. Number two, use of the word path. Outside of that, the spiritual path is perfect. Two biggest problems with the spiritual path. Number one, spiritual. Number two, path. Let's take a look at this. Totally Dzogchen, right? Okay, so let's start with this notion of spiritual, right? Whoever came up with this thing, right? The term, right, is not merely placed in contrast to the material, but in opposition to it, right? Then what happens is spiritual invites a host of insidious and dismissive trajectories. It implies a very dangerous transcendentalism. In order to be spiritual, I got to get the F out of here. Let me tell you the story. I was hanging out with Ken Wilber. He's a friend of mine. You may know him, lives in Denver. And he shared the story with me. It was like unbelievable. He said, you know, I was hanging out with this Pure Land guy. And this Pure Land guy said, they were talking about the meta crisis. That's a new hot term. I think it's a very accurate one, the meta crisis. It is a meta crisis. I mean, there's so much going on here. This is the darkest of the dark age, man. The meta crisis. So he's talking about the meta crisis. And then he's talking about this Pure Land teacher, alleged teacher, who literally said to him, he said, you know, I'm not really that worried about global warming and everything. He said, I'm going to a Pure Land when I die. Now there's a Bodhisattva ideal, right? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Spiritual bypassing, John Welwood. You know the work of John Welwood? Very powerful psychologist, deep Buddhist practitioner, and a book by Robert Augustus Masters by that title, Spiritual Bypassing. I highly recommend it. In my experience, it's not a matter of if you're going to be afflicted with spiritual bypassing, but when. It's a major blind spot. So fundamentally, this dangerous transcendentalism, that in order to be spiritual, you need to get away from the material. Spiritual is good, material is bad. Never the twain shall meet. And then basically, what do? We set out on the spiritual path. Like A.H. Almaas, right? Founder of the Dharma Way. This guy's pretty clever. Physicist, you know his work? Pretty clever guy. He basically said this, paraphrasing him, when people set out on the spiritual path, they're unwittingly setting out for heaven. Just get me the F out of here, right? Samsara's a crap show. I'm FedExing my consciousness out of here, right? Like, even now, exit strategy. That's not Tantra, that's escapism. So that's what happens, this kind of cosmological dualism. Basically, spiritual is set in opposition, nirvana is set in opposition to samsara. Get out of samsara to attain nirvana. That's a poor causal vehicle approach, not fruitional vehicle. Spiritual path becomes escapist. We get lost in all kinds of different space, headspace, even spiritual space. The world sucks. Get me the heck out of here. So, but this is important because we do need to say a couple of things about renunciation here. Riddly. One of the traditional aspects of practicing Buddhism for 40 years is you have this loss of capacities of speech. I fuse these words together. Renunciation, Yejung, right? Definite emergence. Renunciation is a critical component of the path. But the real issue here is what exactly are we renouncing? So we need to explore this a little bit. What exactly are we renouncing? Well, we're renouncing, arguably, samsara, the world of conventional conditional existence, virtually synonymous in an unexamined way with matter and the cult of scientific materialism, fundamentally. But now we have to let's take a really close look at this. Maybe you already know this. Where exactly is samsara? This is a wonderful analytic meditation, by the way, Vipassana. Where exactly is samsara? Samsara is not a state in reality. Samsara is a state of mind. So what you really want to renounce is your inappropriate relationship to matter, to the world, not the material world itself. You want to renounce your inappropriate relationship to phenomenal arising. That's real renunciation. The great gift of Tantra, again, there's so many things to say about Tantra. Tantra redeems matter. They're on equal footing. One of the characteristics of Tantra is body is as important as mind. And so you engage in Tantra, as you know, Joseph said something about the inner yoga, silent practice is all about this bidirectionality. You use body, in this case, subtle body, to invoke correlative qualities of mind. So Tantra redeems matter. Tantra redeems the planet, which is your body, is your personal planet. It redeems the earth. It redeems our relationship to matter. First of all, as we'll see, we can talk about this in the Q&A. There's no such thing as matter. This is an absolute construct. It's an epiphenomenal construct of materialism. Bullshit. Not even bullshit. It's not even wrong. That's how bad it is. We can talk about what matter is or isn't. But conversely, the spiritual path, right? We usually say it's a journey to nirvana, right? Right? But where exactly is that? Same. Nirvana is not a something out there. Nirvana is not a state in reality. Nirvana is a state of mind. It's not waiting for you in the distant future. It's right in front of you, right here, right now. So what really sucks? Samsara doesn't suck. Matter doesn't suck. Your relationship to matter sucks. Reifying it, thinking that it's real. What do you really want to get out of? You want to get out of samsaric state of mind. Again, Trungpa Rinpoche, I'm pinging out a lot of stuff from him today because this is his parinirvana, right? There is no way out. The magic is to discover that there's a way in. I mean, amazing. There is no way out. The magic is to discover that there's a way in. Go deeply into matter and you will find spirit. Go deeply into the profane and you will find sacred. Go deeply into your pain and you will find bliss. Not your conventional bliss, the great bliss, which means you can relate even to incredible physical pain with complete radical acceptance and equanimity. That becomes your bliss. That's what makes it great. Go deeply into yourself and you will find everything that you seek. I mean, that's where the ultimate guru lies, right? In the center of your mandala, provisionally, Machikpatigli, in the center of your heart center. That's real non-duality. So one more last little thing before we talk about the second biggest problem, path. People generally turn to the path because they're hurting, right? First noble truth, suffering. You want to feel good. Hey, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Well, I invite you to take a look, see if it's not true at this level. Authentic path, authentic spirituality is not about feeling good, unless you're talking about basic goodness. Authentic spirituality is about getting real. Buddhism is a description of reality. Authentic spirituality is about getting real, and that means including the reality of old age, sickness, pain, and death. Finding spirit there, that's real Tantra. That's real alchemy. Embracing all of reality, including the material, transcending it. It's more about waking down. There's all this riff about, oh, I'm going to wake up. The path is about waking up. Yeah, that has provisional validity, but that's usually the escapist thing, right? In my opinion, like Saraha said, wisdom abides in the body. Real spirituality, especially at the level of Tantra, is waking down. You know, we're talking in this tradition, I'm sure, Joseph, you guys have had some riffs on the Trikaya. I mentioned a little bit, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. Where exactly are these kayas? They're the full spectrum of your being. They're not out there. The kayas are within you. Purified subtle body is Sambhogakaya. Innermost nature of your heart being is Dharmakaya. What you're looking for is already within you. So that's the first thing that's off. Second thing, and then we'll have a chance to talk. Second thing is this ridiculous notion of path. Right? Path to where, man? Where are you going? This adds insult to injury in my book, right? Well, I'm going to attain enlightenment. I'm going to attain awakening. I'm going to attain non-duality. Well, where exactly is that? take a very close look if you haven't already. Many of you know this is a path to nowhere. Or I like to play with words, now here. Nowhere means now here. It's a path to now here. And so this is where there's so many wisdom traditions. The Hindus have this whole notion of anupaya, right? The path of no path, the path of no method. So many of the wisdom traditions have these intimations of the immediacy of the whole thing. So fundamentally, again, what we're looking for is hiding in plain sight. It's the analogy I give, it's like it's so close to us we don't see it. It's like looking at the inside of your eyelid. Well, you're looking at the inside of your eyelid all the time, right? Go ahead and close your eyes. All right, let's do it for a second. I can't see it, man. Why? Because you're too close. This is, by the way, another definition of non-lucidity. So in a certain way, what we're doing here, playfully, is pulling our eyelids back. Don't release it too quickly. It'll snap back on your eye so that we can see. What we're looking for, I invite you, most people in my experience, me included, especially when I did my long retreat, I wanted to have a spiritual experience, damn it. Right? I was looking for Hollywood. And it took me a while to realize, and please, I don't want to offend anybody here, it's more like Kansas. It's more like Oklahoma. I love Kansas. I love Oklahoma. I went to school in Indiana. These places are really boring, man. They're really ordinary. But that's the issue. We're looking for Hollywood when we're driving right past it. We're driving right past it. It's more like Oklahoma. It's more like Kansas. It's right here. Literally called, remember, ordinary mind, Tamagi Shepa. First mind, ordinary mind. It's extraordinary. And often when people have these, if they're courageous enough to talk about them in sacred environments, and we have to be careful about this, not to talk about it too much, but often when people have a glimpse of the first bhumi, the third path, a very common thing is like, can it really be this simple? Yeah. Stop looking, man. Stop looking. Open the aperture of your awareness, dilate your consciousness. This is it. Look up right now. Let's do this right now. Look up above the screen. Whatever is behind you. Look at that. That's it. That's the clear light mind. That's Rigpa. There's nothing but it. This is why Suzuki Roshi famously said, and this is such a great line, right? Enlightenment was my biggest disappointment. The ultimate downer, the ultimate letdown, right? Into what? Into reality. That's why it's such a bust for ego, right? Ego wants this big Hollywood type grand cosmic orgasmic experience. And hey, I'm not saying that can't happen. But what I'm saying is if you've had these experiences, the ecstasy is directly proportional to the preceding moment of agony. In other words, if you're really contracted, and I could do it here, but I won't. Like so many of these Western masters, right? Oh my God, how many of these Western masters do we have? They have this huge meditation experience, a yam. They have this grand initial opening. I'm not denying it at all. It's 100% valid. But it's so bloody orgasmic. It's so bloody ecstatic. Why? Only because of the preceding level of contraction. If you're already really, really, really open, meditation, my favorite definition of meditation, habituation to openness, also a synonym for emptiness, right? If you're really, really open, the final grand opening, like Suzuki Roshi, is the ultimate disappointment, the letdown's like, this is it. Yeah, that's it. So these big orgasmatron people that talk about it is only orgasmic, just like with traditional orgasm, because of the previous level of contraction. And then when you have these things, then you're really effed. Like Taisitu Rinpoche said, these spiritual experiences are the most dangerous of all traps because they're so good. They taste so good. They feel so good. They're like spiritual candy. They're like mental cavity. You feast on the stuff, your meditation is going to get sick. I'm a retired dental surgeon. You're going to get truth decay, right? You're going to suffer from really acute truth decay if you just feast on these meditation experiences. All of a sudden you have this big experience. Oh, this is it. This is spiritual. The big classic Nyam, bliss, clarity, non-thought, right? You have one of these. You think you've made it. No, you've just temporarily opened up. But you've really screwed yourself because now you've set a new self-imposed metric for what constitutes spiritual experience for you. Now you're really screwed. You've just replaced the chain made of lead with one made of gold, right? My meditation won't be the same unless I have that experience again. Then what happens? You become a state junkie. You become an addict, a God addict. I just have to go back to that God realm state. I have to go back to Hollywood. I have to go back to whatever. Boy, oh boy, are you missing it then, right? Right? So I'm going to say the next couple things several times because this is the Nyingtig. This is the center of my mandala, of my presentation. You don't need to have any special experience to be free. You don't have to go anywhere. Thinking that you do, paradoxically, ironically, pulls you away from that which you truly seek. To be on a spiritual path assumes the absence of what you're seeking. To search for the truth, you have to deny that it's here. The path, therefore, is perceptual, not actual. You're not going anywhere. The path is perceptual, not actual. Let me read this again. I wrote this down because this is it. You do not need to have any special experience to be free. So that's why we did the heart thing. I don't care what you're feeling, man. It just doesn't matter. You can feel like total shit. That does not create karma. You relate to that fully. That's non-duality. That's perfect purity. That's a Pure Land. You don't have to go anywhere. Thinking that you do, ironically, paradoxically, pulls you away from that which you truly seek. To be on a path presumes the absence of what you're seeking, right? Otherwise, why would you be on the path? To search for the truth, you need to deny that it's here. The path is perceptual, not actual. You're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. What you're looking for is hiding right in front of you. That's why it says, if you've read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the single most repeated phrase over and over and over about Vipassana phrase, recognition and liberation are simultaneous, ultimate lucidity. Recognition and liberation are simultaneous, right? So as I start to wind this up, many of us are on the spiritual path trying to experience, and raise your hand, close your eyes if you don't, don't want to be embarrassed. Most of us are on the spiritual path, are driven there to experience something other than what we're experiencing right now, right? Otherwise, why would we be on the spiritual path? So do you see the Zen-like quality of this? You're trying to experience something other than what you're experiencing. That's why you got on the path. Hey, again, I'm not dissing in any way where this is absolute level teaching. We have to recognize the validity of the provisional causal vehicles. I'm not dissing the whole path of accumulation, path of juncture. This stuff transcends but includes that. But this is a Dzogchen group, so we're going to the very allegedly highest state, which is what? The lowest state. Bottom out. Most people on the path are driven to experience something other than what they're experiencing right now. This can't be it. This can't be good enough. It's got to be more than this. This is incomplete. Who says? Ego. That's not a desire for enlightenment or truth. That's a desire for escape. Again, Pema Chodron, right? The Wisdom of No Escape. Her first book, she was onto this thing. If you're looking for anything other, you're on a dualistic path. It's like our Zen brothers and sisters say, even to be attached to the idea of enlightenment is to go astray. Just let things be in their own way. And this is why so much of the path is negation, right? Meister Eckhart, the soul does not grow by addition, but by subtraction. The via negativa, the apophatic way. Negation, nirvana, nirguna, nirodha, nisprapancha. These are all terms of negation. So what these teachings do, ironically, they're the addition of an implementations tool for subtraction. You're not adding anything. You're adding a teaching that is like a shovel or a dust mop that just removes the adventitious defilements. Discovery, the process of one of discovery. It's right here. It's in the Christian tradition. What do they say in the Gnostic Gnostic Gospel of St. Thomas. The kingdom of the Father is spread out before you, but you do not see it. So what this implies, and we're almost done, you never actually attain enlightenment. You, by the way, parenthetically, you can't attain enlightenment. They're contradiction in terms. Enlightenment is defined by the negation of you. This is why Trungpa Rinpoche, again, in honor of him today, you cannot attend your own funeral. You never attain enlightenment. How can you attain something you already have? You simply cease to be deluded. Again, all the terms of negation, 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 cutting, cutting, cutting. That's why there's so much cutting in the path. Removing, negating, the extreme path to the middle, cutting. You never attain enlightenment. You're already enlightened. You just have to recognize it. It's right here. I mean, really, it's right. Holy crap. T.S. Eliot, right? To arrive is where you started. See it as if for the first time. It's right here. It's right now. So what do we do? Oh, one more thing to say here. Almost forgot. At the highest levels, I've been reading. Let me just riff this with you for a second. I teach a lot on the Bardos, and there's one of the really cool things about the Bardo teachings is they're like the singularity of the Dharma. If you're penetrating the Bardos, if you've studied them at all, like all the Dharma is in the Bardos. It's like a singularity in physics. Everything is here. And one of the things I was really paying attention to studying, especially Nyingma contribution, Bardo Dharmata. You won't find this in most Kagyu Sakya Gelug texts. This is principally a Nyingma contribution, Luminous Bardo Dharmata, which fundamentally, unless you do things like Treksha Togal, goes unrecognized. But what I was really thinking about, I mentioned earlier something, I think in this program, I mentioned something earlier about amnesia, forgetfulness, samsara is like a PTSD. We can talk about that if you want, post-truth stress disorder. The truth of the Dharmakaya is what you go to when you return to. It's too bright, it's too luminous, too much truth, too much real news. Fake news, ego can't take it. So basically what it does, it blacks out and it contracts. Fundamentally what happens, and this is where it applies now, because the luminous Bardo or Dharmata, you do not have to wait till you die to experience the Dharmata. It's synonymous with everything we're talking about it. But what happens in the Dharmata that's an interesting iteration of what's happening now is the thermonuclear nature, all heaven breaks loose. The thermonuclear nature of reality is revealed. But because we're not familiar with that, again, the word for meditation, we fundamentally, it's too bright. It's too little. You could say it's too much because it's too little. It's emptiness. It's too bright. And so what do? We distract away from it. The etymology of the word distraction is really interesting. The word distraction literally means distract, means to pull apart. Wow. And what it intimates in the Bardo Dharmata is that when reality is pointed out, it's too much, it's too bright, or whatever, we contract. There's that contraction narrative again. We distract, we pull away. That's what hurls us after death from the luminous Bardo Dharmata into the karmic Bardo becoming. That's what kicks us out of samsara, nirvana into samsara. Well, then in a really beautiful bidirectional way, these are bootstrap phenomena. We wake up in this life. We reiterate this phenomenology of contraction, distraction, every time we're literally distracted now. So we distract in life because we distract in the Bardos. We distract in the Bardos because we distract here. And so therefore, by working with this non-distraction, which is remembrance, the essence of spiritual practice is remembrance, that's how you heal that fracture. Not only are you preparing, right, to experience the Dharmata at the end of life, to enter heaven, the Pure Land, you're actually learning how to enter it right now, to discover that you're in Sukhavati. This is where Dukhavati, we're in Dukhavati, whether you know it or not, the land of suffering, Dukkha, this is Dukhavati. You flip Dukhavati into Sukhavati on the spot by ceasing distraction. So every time you come back to your breath, every time you come back in basic mindfulness, you're healing this fundamental fracture. And by doing so at the deepest iterative levels, that fundamental distraction in terms of remembrance is healed, whole, and then you reunite with the Buddha within you. You see the reality as it is a Pure Land. So what do we do fundamentally? Nothing. How do we attain enlightenment then? What do we do? Nothing. But we do it really well. That's the art of meditation. Non-distracted, non-meditation. Longchenpa, the great king of Dzogchen, if you want to experience natural mind, you can only do it by not wanting to. Don't distract, don't draw apart, simply be fundamentally present. And what the real kicker here is, even the path at this level becomes a distraction. Even meditation becomes a distraction. Oh, I've got to go back to, I've got to go to my little, and if I could turn my camera here, I'm not dissing it. I got a beautiful little shrine room here. I go into retreat every year. I'm not dissing that. I'm just simply contextualizing it. The spiritual path can become a distraction. Meditation can become a distraction if you use it as a spiritual bypass strategy to feel better, feel real, get real. That's how you're going to fundamentally feel real better. So basically, yeah, I think I'm just about there, believe it or not. These absolute level teachings, they transcend but include the relative. They lead you to the end of the path, not as a final destination, but in realizing that enlightenment is a false destination. Enlightenment is a false destination. Don't hang that carrot in front of you. Nowhere to go, no way to get there. We've been there all along. Norman Fisher, the Zen teacher. So what I say here playfully, stop deferring your enlightenment. Stop rescheduling your appointment with reality. Stop rescheduling your appointment with reality. The only thing you have to do, nothing. Or if you want 2 other words, open. Relax. That's it. Those 2 words define the entire spiritual path. You want to have a good death? That's all you have to do. Open, relax. That's it. Gotta go. See you. Bye. Thanks, Glenn. Okay, I riffed longer than I expected because I kind of got into this a little bit, so I apologize.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. That was great. Yeah, I figured you'd have something to say, and you surely did. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Really, really, really appreciate it. Okay,
Yeah.
questions are starting. Marco has raised his hand.
All right, wait, Mark.
Go ahead, Marco. Just unmute yourself.
Sorry, my apologies. I wasn't actually raising my hand. I just couldn't take I was applauding.
Oh.
My apologies. But since I'm here, and sorry for my camera, just a very antiquated computer. But Andrew, thank you so much. I first wanted to say I appreciate that the acronym of your name, Andrew Holecek, is AW. So
yeah, somebody caught that. That's right. It's the fundamental Prajnaparamita Sutra.
Very appropriate. So since if I just for this is a more involved question, but quickly, your whatever you can share about Pure Lands with us. I know that's complex and vast, but much appreciated if you can. Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can say a few things. And again, because of Joseph very kind invitation for moments of shameless self-promotion. I've done 2 entire weekends on this. You probably find, I think they're available on my website. I'm not entirely sure. 3 days on Sutra Pure Land, 3 days on Tantra Pure Land. So there's obviously a great deal to say here. Maybe that's the first thing. There is it's difficult to say provisional because that somehow then kind of demeans the Sutra level Pure Land stuff. Largest form of Buddhism in the world, 100 million practitioners. This is where Amitabha comes in. I think you guys have talked about Dzogchen. Incredibly valid. The best thing short of attaining Dharmakaya enlightenment and the Bardo, second best thing you can do is go to a Pure Land. The one with the easiest visa requirement, easiest access is Sukhavati. So from a sutra point of view, start doing, I mean, every night when I go to sleep, I learned this from Tukanima Rinpoche. I do it every night. I visualize Amitabha on top of my head. I recite his mantra. That's his email address, by the way. He'll respond right away. He's very good at texting. Email respond. His email address, Om Ami Dewa Hri in Tibetan. Om Ami Dewa Hri. Say it 3 times. Om Ami Dewa Hri, Om Ami Dewa Hri, Om Ami Dewa Hri. Dissolve Amitabha in the top of your head into your heart center. Let him reside in your heart center. It's like he's tucking you into sleep. I do that every single night. So there's just a ton, Marco, to say about Sutra Pure Land. For us, Tantrikas, Tantra Pure Land is the most important. And that's basically another way to talk about what we're talking, to talk about what I riffed on today. That when you open the lens of your awareness aperture, this is Sukhavati. This is, you're in a Pure Land. It's a matter of recognition. And so, just because it's so bloody big, unless you have a specific vector within the Pure Land teachings, it's just a really big topic. There is no overt Pure Land sect in Tibetan Buddhism, but there's a very strong Pure Land orientation. I mean, when I lived in Nepal, when I started collecting all this data, I interviewed a ton of people, and I noticed there's a picture earlier of Dzogchen Khyentse Rinpoche. Well, I met with his Dzogchen Khyentse Rinpoche's teacher, Khenpo Ape. And I had a really long, incredibly rich conversation with Khenpo Ape about Sukhavati and that whole trail. And not a single teacher, not only Khenpo Ape, but all the masters I met with over there, not one of them disparaged them and said, oh, this is Buddhism light, don't worry about it. Not one. So I think it's actually something that could be more emphasized in the Tantric community. Sometimes people think of it as lazy Buddhism. I'm just going to put all my eggs in that basket. But again, it's in our languaging, it's a form of Sambhoga Kaya Poa, for sure. And it's a very powerful way to prepare to be held by the embrace of the principal Buddha of our dimension, which is Amitabha, right? So, Marco, just because it's such a massive topic, maybe I'll let it go with that, unless you have something else you want to say.
That's wonderful. Much appreciated. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, welcome.
Go ahead, anybody.
Paco.
Hello, Andrew. Well, thank you so much for your wonderful teachings. They are very precious. I kind of nervous. Got so much questions that I would want to ask you, so I want to get my best shot. It's hard to pick, but I might just go to a very simple beginner's question. I having a little bit of a trouble maybe distinguishing the difference between shamatha and vipassana. I've been taking I've been asked some teachers, and some teachers have told me, well, the way we have been practicing shamatha and vipassana with myself and some teachers is, shamatha is stabilizing your attention, and then that's shamatha, and then vipassana will be just analytic vipassana. And then I now I'm at Naropa, and we are practicing Chogyam Trungpa style, which is, I don't know if you know the meditation, shamatha vipassana, which is a combination together. And here we refer to vipassana as open awareness practice kind of thing. And I have asked my other teachers, and they say, well, no, you're not doing vipassana, you're doing objectless shamatha. And so I'm kind of confused. What is the difference between them?
Yeah, great questions, Paco. Yeah, those are not entry-level questions. Those are really good questions. So yeah, so this is a big topic again. Wonderful. Shamatha and Vipassana are both what are called polysemous or multivalent terms, which means they're situational. They're defined differently depending on the context. And so on one level, you could say arguably, and I think you could make a very legitimate case for this, every single practice in Tibetan Buddhism is subsumed under the rubric of either shamatha or vipassana or its union. Everything. And so you mentioned shamatha. As the word shine means, right, tranquility, quiescence. Fundamentally, it's a way to stabilize, to settle the mind. The Buddha did not invent this, by the way. The people who say mindfulness, that's the colloquial translation of shamatha, mindfulness comes from the Buddha. No, it doesn't. It comes from the developing Brahmanic tradition. He inherited shamatha. What the Buddha invented was vipassana. That's what led to his enlightenment. So a couple of central points here is, in this, I'm writing a book. The subtitle of, it's coming out next year. The title is, Okay, I'm Mindful, ... Now what? I'm exploring the wonders of the mind. And it's an endorsement and a critique of the mindfulness revolution. Because mindfulness is great, but here's the kicker. Mindfulness sedates. It does not liberate. Let me say that again. Mindfulness sedates. It does not liberate. With the world that's on fire, chilling out is a really good thing. but it won't wake you up. It basically pacifies. Vipassana liberates. And so the way I relate to them is, and this is actually really important for Tantrikas and Sadhakas and Dzogchen practitioners, because most of what takes place here, once you get beyond Mahamudra Shamatha, is Vipassana level insight practices. But fundamentally, the way I relate to it, Shamatha slows down the mind, sometimes even stops it. And then Vipassana allows you to see, right? So it's slow down to see, stop to see. Because otherwise, if the mind, the 4 stages of Shamatha, the waterfall, if we lose the essence of the display. This is one of the great, who said this? Probably Rinpoche. One way to talk about samsara is we lose the essence of the mind in the display of the mind. We lose emptiness and luminosity or form. And so one way to recapture the essence is to lessen the display. That's what shamatha does. Sit down, put the brakes, literally B-R-A-K-E, on your being. The brakes lead to breaks, B-R-E-A-K-S. They allow you to see. So you're sitting there, your mind is speeding, you're not going to see crap. Camouflage, you're just losing it. You slow down. Now you can finally, okay, now it's like, when I first started teaching meditation, I had a big thing of a thing of water filled with a particular metallic substance that I could shake up. It was actually amalgam dust. I'd shake it up and the whole thing would get all cloudy and you couldn't see squat. That's a mind before shamatha. And I wouldn't say anything. I leave it on my little teaching table, and 15 minutes later, the sediment would drop and it would be clear again. That's shamatha allowing vipassana. It allows you to see, right? And so then when you talk about vipassana, that's another massive multivalent term, because then you got, what's the difference between vipassana and vipassana, mahavipassana, open awareness, mahamudra vipassana. So centrifuging out that, your confusion is warranted, because you have to be, this is one of the really great, elegant aspects of understanding and titrating and being really precise and sophisticated. What do you really mean when you say shamatha? Are you talking about Theravada shamatha, Mahayana shamatha, Mahamudra shamatha? What are you talking about? When you talk about vipassana, it's a multivalent term. What are you talking about? So therefore, again, lots to say on this one, but fundamentally, slow down, stop, see, right? And then, from there, going into all the differences between that and objectless shamatha and open awareness and open monitoring. I can do it if you want, but it's important, but for the purposes of time, maybe I'll let that slide for now. Helpful?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Yeah.
Ricky, go ahead.
Yep, I have a question. And thanks, Andrew. Really appreciate you joining us. And I love all your books. Looking forward to your new books that are coming out. So thanks so much. This has been great. Yeah, and like Paco, I have a bunch of questions, but since it's Trungpa Rinpoche's Parinirvana day, I'm gonna ask you about a quote from something he wrote. I think it's Dzogchen Practice in Daily Life, and it kind of rings true to a bunch of what you've been talking about in this session. And Joe and I were talking about it maybe a couple of weeks ago, but I'll just read it out. Everything is naturally perfect just as it is. All phenomena appear in their uniqueness as part of the continually changing pattern. These patterns are vibrant with meaning and significance at every moment, yet there is no significance to attach to such meanings beyond the moment in which they present themselves. So that really, it's a great teaching altogether, but that really stuck with me. And I guess, can you talk about these continually changing patterns and what they are, and then also how to recognize their meaning and significance without attaching extra meaning onto it, like he's talking about? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So the patterns thing again. This is, here's the thing about it's a little bit like Paco's question. Reality is iterative. Reality has displays fractality. It's like a fractal, self-similar, and that's why you have these iterative, multivalent terms and phenomena, right? And so this is what's really beautiful, that when you start to really look at reality, there is a kind of healthy reductionism that can take place. And Dzogchen does this, by the way. That's what makes it so beautiful. You can actually reduce, which turns out to be a form of elevationism. You can reduce the vast multitudinous display of the phenomenal world, the fundamental irreducible components. And so, again, I say that because when we talk about the patterns and the variety, that, like Paco's saying, that manifests on a number of different levels. On the most fundamental level, these patterns are part of the Togal teachings, where Khenpo Rinpoche talked about it as, reality is the play of swirling iridescent bindus. It's just a play of light and space, luminosity and emptiness. And these particular lights then constellate. This is what the 4 visions of Togal are about. This is what you see in the stages of luminous Bardo Dharmata when you're dying. This is what you see in Dark Retreat. You start to see how these lights appear, then they start to constellate, and they create particular patterns and mandalas and whatnot. And this is part of the whole sacred geometry thing that you'll see even when you're taking ayahuasca, or you go you see Arabic art. It's talking about these fundamental, even Plato talked about it, I think, when he was intimating the world of form. So again, these questions are so great. There's so much here. But fundamentally, again, at the most irreducible level, it's all the play of these iridescent bindus, the germinative seeds of reality, the pixelated nature of reality. This is all just made of frozen light, man. Even the physicist will tell you this. Reality is pixelated, it's pointillistic. And these patterns that are constellated into particular into particular display patterns, we know that is the phenomenal world. And then that display itself becomes iterative based on our karmic predispositions and propensities. That's what makes my display different than yours. That's what's make yours different from your cats. That's what's make the cats different from your dogs. And then you get into all the other stuff that then kind of tweaks around that sort of thing. So I'm going to pause to make sure that's hitting your sweet spot, and also to give you a second to remind me of the second aspect of your question.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks. And the second point was how to recognize the meaning of the significance and meaning in the patterns without
Imputing.
Attaching extra, like, kind of.
Yeah, it's not a cosmic Rorschach blotch, right? You're not sitting there figurating it, right? I mean, that's what ego does. It's this cosmological Rorschach blotch. So the reality plays, and then ego is literally, neuroscientists talk about it as the process of flicker fusion. Literally, we've literally confused based on these patterns. We create these particular patterns based on ego. But fundamentally, when they arise, the meaning is in the phenomenal display itself. That's what's called self-symbolism. There's no imputed meaning to it, right? The meaning is inherent in the display itself, and you know that through the recognition of sacred world, Dzogchen. The world just becomes pure and sacred without the secondary conceptual imputation of meaning that we usually bring to that display. See, and so that's why when you have the most profound experiences, they're saturated with meaning inherent in the display itself, not with all the secondary bullshit that we throw onto it, right? And so therefore, you know this, you have a complete non-conceptual experience, you strip away the defilements, then the natural sacredness, that you could say, and even that already starts to pull it away because you already labeled it as sacred, but that's as closest as a dualistic medium can get to supporting a non-dualistic experience. But the meaning is actually in the shine itself, in the display itself. Okay, something like that.
Super.
Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, really rich. Fun stuff.
But let me just insert that it is 7:30. I know that we said we'd keep you till now, but we have time for one
I can hang
more,
for a little while. If you want to ask a few more, I'm good. Because I
Yeah.
chatted more than I expected
Very
to.
nice.
So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I noticed that Nick put a question in the chat earlier on. If you could talk about the signs of having received the pointing out instruction.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes, I can. Yeah. So, well, I mean, actually, it would be fun if we had the time to say, like, what have you noticed? I mean, there are a couple of things. One immediate, there's some sort of immediate sequela, so to speak. And then there's some more kind of protracted kind of post-meditation. Because in Dzogchen, post-meditation refers to any moment when you're no longer in the samadhi of Rigpa, the nature of mind. That's what's called post-meditation there. So one somewhat immediate sequela of authentic recognition, and I've noticed this when I would just listen to people when they would come out and they would just share some things, is the world appears dreamlike. It's a little bit less reified. It's a little bit less solid. So you come out of an empowerment or abhisheka or pointing out transmission, and it just, things are a little bit more open, a little bit more luminous, translucent, literally quite kind of dreamlike. This was really an experience of what's called perfectly pure illusory form. There's 3 forms of illusion. This is the 3rd and highest form, spontaneous, perfectly pure illusory form. The world just seems literally lighter, a double entendre of enlightenment. So it can literally appear freer, more open. You can have the experiences of the 3 principal jnans, bliss, right? Clarity. You can literally see, sometimes you'll see light around objects. You know, you almost like halos and shit. You'll be looking at stuff and light will be radiating out. And then, of course, non-thought. Those are the 3 kind of classic jnans that are indicators of an intimation of reality. There are others, but those are the most classic ones. And then just this kind of ineffable feeling tone of remembrance, almost, you know, nostalgia, recognition, and homecoming. Just feels, you know, ordinary, right? Ordinary on that level. So it depends. People relate to these experiences quite differently depending on what they bring to it, their predispositions and whatnot. So one of the dangers in pinging out any of these signs is you may have had a completely authentic pointing out experience and even recognition. And so if it doesn't fall into this particular list that I just gave you, it doesn't mean you haven't had it. But the key is, and this is really what's quite interesting, both in terms of the death process, the sleeping process, is you can have experiences and not recognize them. In fact, it happens all the time. This is the difference between what's called phenomenal consciousness and metaconsciousness. This happens all the time. Like, for instance, until I bring it to your attention, you've been having the experience of breathing all the time. It's there in your phenomenal consciousness. It's just not metaconscious. You don't recognize it. It has to be re-represented. It has to be re-represented. That's metacognition. And so this is important because when you have experiences of deep meditation, you could actually be having experiences of lucid sleep and lucid dreaming and not even know it. It's non-reportable. You actually can have the experience and not recognize it in metaconsciousness. Same thing is going to happen when you die. We're all going to experience the Dharmata. The issue wasn't the experience. The issue was recognition. No recognition, no liberation. No metaconsciousness, no recognition. So we want to become meta-aware. We want to become aware that we're aware of that. You see? And so that's just a tiny, somewhat technical sidebar. But in terms of the experience itself, you come out, it's like a little, sometimes like a thunderclap, right? There's a flash of light before the thunder comes in. It just feels open, fresh, lighter, freer. Love, devotion, compassion. Because they're very interesting. Devotion and compassion are 2 principal expressions of this state. And they're therefore 2 principal ways to enter that state. See? So love, kindness, compassion, devotion can arise when you're having the experience itself as well. So there's a lot of different jnans. These are all jnans, temporary experience. And what do you do with all of them? What's the most important thing to do with the meditation experience? Let it go. Reinstate the causes and conditions that brought about the experience to begin with, which is what? Openness. Because otherwise what happens again, you may have some Hollywood experience, right? That's the worst thing you can do with the meditation experience. My teacher, Khenpo Rinpoche, said, you know, you nurture your meditation by destroying it. That's a tantric thing. You nurture your meditation by destroying it. What that means is you destroy. It's like when they say in the Zen tradition, if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him. You nurture the meditation by releasing, letting go, reinstating the conditions that brought about the experience to begin with. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Ego is going to appropriate. It's going to contract. It's going to grasp. Then you're effed if that happens. Okay, so something like that. Anybody else?
We got time for one more. Anybody?
Dan, fire away, Dan. Unmute yourself.
So everything that you've said so far, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Everything that you've said so far to me seems like it would be most likely experienced in sitting practice. And so my question is, it's making me think, well, I need to spend more time sitting and less time doing, let's say, Nindro or sadhana practice. Is that a correct view?
Why? I'm curious why you say that. Maybe.
Well, because I've got this highlighted here, the words open and relaxed, which you mentioned earlier. That's it. Everything. That's everything's being open and relaxed, and it seems like the most logical way that you would experience openness and relaxation is sitting, as opposed to doing something like a Nindro or sadhana practice. So. Guess that my question is the balance between the two, forms of practice.
Exactly. Really, really good question. Well, this is why, the great gift of the Tantra, again, the synonym for Tantra is upaya yana, the vehicle of skillful means. There are so many different meditations. The center of the mandala of all the practices is this essence, mind, nature, rigpa. That's the essence. But, like to say, Triangle Rinpoche talks about this a lot. It's really quite difficult because of our habit patterns, the karma, the forces of the dark side. It's very difficult to do nothing well. There's too much momentum. And so, yes, on an absolute level, yes, so to speak, theoretically, the only thing you have to do is just that. But I wouldn't put all my eggs there, because what can happen if you do that, you can, one near enemy of this is slipping into a God realm, or even worse, an animal realm. And so therefore, there's a reason they have all these skillful means. And this is actually one of the reasons that these highest practices are a little bit restricted and secretive and prescription strength. Because if we transcend and exclude, see, that's what happens. Instead of transcend and include, we transcend and exclude. And then we dismiss the causal vehicles and merit. I mean, what did Padmasambhava say? Your view should be as lofty as the heavens, but your conduct should be as fine as barley powder. So what I would recommend personally, because I have tremendous homage to the classical approach and the traditional approach. I would work with all of these things, because otherwise, yes, again, there's no way I can challenge and say, yes, you can rest in Rigpa, nature, mind, emptiness. Will I take care of it? Yes, in theory. And I say that because in theory, because of all the habit patterns, there's so many habit patterns. Only Buddhas are habit free. We're infected with habit patterns, karma. And that's where then all these other methods come into play. Remember, again, the accumulation of merit. Nundro is about that. Each one of the specific practices has its own specific kind of bandwidth of applicability. But I would say celebrate, treasure the extraordinary skillful means that we've been given. I mean, there's so many practices. Use them all. As you age and die, like on your deathbed, then you want to go into the bardos with the practice like holding the hand of a friend. You want to go into the bardos with a practice that you're most familiar with, the one that most makes you relax. So I don't know you. I don't know your predispositions. It's difficult for me to be your meditation instructor. But I would say, as a kind of a generic recommendation, I would say be a little careful of putting all your eggs in the absolutistic basket, because then you become a little bit, again, I love the Advaita Vedanta people. I love the non-dual people. But it's a major blind spot with these non-dual traditions, is they put everything in the non-dual basket. Why do that? There's a lot of potential traps there. I would say do your Nindro. There's a reason it's in there, man. There's a reason it's in the tradition. There's a reason you have a karma to be not only here, but introduced to Nindro. And I mean, there are people in Tibet who do 16 sets of Nindro, right? I mean, these practices and preliminaries are more important than the main practice. And then do all the other upayas that speak to you. And then, as you get older and you become more familiar with these, you will then find it's a little like lucid dreaming techniques. There's so many different ways to achieve lucidity. Sooner or later, you'll find one or two that hit your sweet spot, and then that's your way in. But until then, I would say do what your teacher recommends. Be a little careful to, again, the ultimate guru is within. Be careful, you have to listen to the right guru. Really easy, self-deception. What did Richard Feynman say, the physicist? We're like the easiest people to fool. We're always fooling ourselves. So that's just what comes to mind, my friend. Yes, these absolute practices, that really is kind of the summit. But you can get high altitude sickness. These are high altitude practices. You can get high altitude sickness. Come down to earth, work with all the bandwidths of practices you've been given. Celebrate what you have, use them all. Okay, Dzogchen, and maybe that could be it for today.
Okay, Dzogchen, last one. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, like, how do we enhance those lucid dreams experience that, like you said, how do we enhance those?
Say, you broke up a little bit. How do we what? How do we have lucid dreams?
How do we enhance the experience of lucid dreams?
How do we enhance? I think.
Oh, how do we enhance? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, sure. Well, you definitely hit one of my sweet spots. First and foremost, in a gesture of self-promotion, you read my 3 books. My dream trilogy, The Art of Lucid Dreaming workbook, my first book, Dream Yoga, and then my last book on Dreams of Light. But humor aside, the most important thing that we can do as practitioners, 2 things, is continue our practice of meditation. Studies have shown, and I've been involved in these studies, meditators have more lucid dreams because lucidity is a code word for awareness. And so when you're engaging in meditation, you're engaging in the practice of lucidity. So continue to stabilize, enhance your practice of lucidity. Meditation masters, almost all their dreams are lucid. In the mind of a true meditation master, there's no such thing as a non-lucid dream. All their dreams are lucid. How did they get that way? By establishing a lucid relationship to the contents of your mind. Thoughts are to dreaming consciousness as, thoughts are to waking consciousness as dreams are to dreaming consciousness. So if you have a non-lucid relationship to the contents of your mind now, the moniker for dream yoga is what? The measure of the path. It will show you how lucid you are at night. Secondly, and this is the great contribution of the East, is the practice of illusory form, Julu. My book, Dreams of Light, is all about that. So these are the 2 principal diurnal daytime practices you can do. And then in conjunction with that, then you have, Dzogchen, all the things you can do, like enhance your practice of liminal dreaming. That's the first segue into the 5 nocturnal meditations. Become familiar with the other induction methods, increase sleep hygiene, both East and West. There's a really wonderful way to reestablish a kind of a temple of sleep that's really, really important. Consistency in lucidity is best brought about by an integral, holistic, systemic approach using the principles of dependent origination. Non-lucidity comes about in a multifactorial systemic way. All these forces of the dark side that I talk about, societal, cultural, phenomenological, biological, these all co-conspire to bring about non-lucidity. You want to have lucidity constantly, you have to work with all those factors, classic Buddhist dependent origination things. So you work with your own experience phenomenologically, you're going to work with good diet things, that's the biological part, this is the whole integral theory thing. Work with all 4 kind of quadrants or bandwidths of your experience. Non-lucidity doesn't stand a chance. So again, oh my gosh, there's so much to say here. And again, I've written a ton about it, but those are the principal ones. And then if you're really into it, just soak in the literature. Read everything you can, take seminars, do all that kind of stuff. Just like anything else, it starts to infiltrate. You start to install all these pop-ups. That's what's happening. You're installing all these pop-ups in your conscious mind. And then actually, let me just share one last thing from Dzogchen Rinpoche. He gave a dream yoga thing that I went to, and his only instruction, his only induction method, one thing, intention. Intention. The mind leads all things. Intention leads all things. And intention, it actually permeates. Intention literally etymologically means to stretch towards. Intention is what stretches the conscious mind towards previously unconscious domains. And so it's also what bridges conscious with unconscious principles. So you can just, it may seem patronizing, but this is the only dream yoga technique he gave. I was like blown away. Intention. Heartfelt, it's karma. Heartfelt, passionate intention. And before you go to sleep, you ramp it up using laws of proximate karma. Tonight, I'm going to have many dreams. I'm going to remember my dreams. I'm going to wake up in my dreams. Say it 7 times before you go to sleep, 7 or 21 times. It perfumes your sleep. Same principle, by the way, in Pure Land practice. Same idea. It's a type of POA. Transferring lucidity from the conscious state into the semi and an unconscious state of the dream. So just briefly, parenthetically, number 1 for you, continue your practices. Maybe become familiar with what's called impure illusory form, which is the first of the 3 illusory form practices. And that's mostly just saying, it may seem patronizing throughout the day, right? Absolute bodhicitta slogans, right? In post-meditation, one should be a child of illusion, regard all dharmas as dreams. Say to yourself as often as you can, this is a dream. Mean it. This is a dream. This is a dream. And then supercharge it with the octane of intent, and you'll be good to go. This will also help you when you die. It's the same phenomenology takes place on the Bardo, because death is just a dream at the end of time. So by working with dream yoga, you're preparing for death. That's why that practice came about. So I was given the permission to say one thing. We just launched. It's opening. I think he put it up. Maybe somebody in the chat column. We started this program that we've been working on for 10 years. Starts in July. A 3-month, really, really rigorous, intensive preparing to die program. If you're interested, that's on my main site, my website. We just posted it and we're launching it in July. And then I have a kind of I think an interesting program on the deep dive secret of happiness, somewhat akin to what we're talking about here. That's in 2 weeks. So this is just a way for me to realize I'll come back to earth, self-aggrandizement, self-promotion. It's like Dzogchen Rinpoche always says, I love it. It's all about me. Let's get real. It's all about me. So check out all my crap, my nightclub platform, my Edge of Mind podcast platform. So much propaganda out there. It's kind of embarrassing. But hey, thank you, Joseph.
Hey,
thank you, everybody. It's been so much fun.
Really appreciate it so much. Hopefully you come back sometime. Don't say no.
Yeah, it's been fun. I appreciate it. And again, we'll send deep beams of dedication to merit to all sentient beings. I'm sure you guys do.
Let's take a second and just dedicate the merit, just since we're here. Let's just let be right now. Open and relaxed. By this merit, may merit attain omniscience, having defeated the enemy from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all. Thanks so much, Andrew. That was great. Really appreciate it. Look forward to meeting you in person sometime.
Likewise. It's been fun, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. See you next week. Take care, Andrew. Be well. Good job, everyone. Glad you were here.
Thank
That
you.
was terrific. Thank you very much. He's great. Yeah, that was super. So thank you so much, especially Ricky. We owe Ricky lots of thanks because he was the one who set this up. Thank you, Ricky. Totally excellent. One more feather in this group. So anyway, if you have questions for me, then send me an email. And if you want to join our little WhatsApp group, I'm sure there'll be some discussion about this stuff. Then just let me or Ricky know and we can add you. In the meantime, be well, remember your dreams, and be open and relaxed. And we will see each other next week. Love you guys.
Thank you, Joe.
Pleasure. Good to see you.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. That's hot. Good night, everybody. Take care.